The blood-red sunset cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Dillon, Montana, as Nayeli Duquesne clutched her small bundle of belongings and stared at the wooden sign swinging in the evening breeze. She had traveled far, her heart heavier than her possessions, her Crow tribal markings still visible despite her attempts to dress like a white woman. The year was 1875, and Nayeli had just lost everything she had ever known for the crime of loving someone her people deemed an enemy. "No point standing there looking like a lost pup," called a gruff voice from the nearby livery stable. Vaughn Ironside stepped out, wiping his hands on a dirty rag, his tall frame silhouetted against the golden light spilling from the stable. "Town ain't getting any friendlier after dark." Nayeli straightened her spine, remembering her father's teachings about showing strength even when your spirit was breaking. "I'm looking for work and lodging," she said, her English careful but confident. "I can cook, clean, and I know medicine." Vaughn's eyes narrowed slightly, taking in her dark braided hair, the high cheekbones, and the small beaded medicine pouch she wore around her neck, despite her otherwise Western clothing. He'd seen Indian women in town before, but rarely alone, and never looking quite so determined yet vulnerable. "Medicine, huh?" He stepped closer, noticing the exhaustion in her eyes. "Well, Mrs. Peterson at the boarding house might need help, and Doc Miller's always complaining about needing someone who knows herbs." He hesitated, then nodded toward the end of the street. "I can walk you there if you like. Some folks around here ain't too welcoming to Indians," she finished for him. "I know, I've met your kind before." Something flashed in Vaughn's eyes, not anger, but recognition of her pain. "Not all my kind are the same, miss, just like I reckon not all your people think alike either." Nayeli stared at him, surprised by his response. Most white men she'd encountered outside her tribe's lands either leered at her or treated her with contempt. This one seemed different, though his cowboy hat and weathered appearance marked him as typical of the frontier men who had changed the West forever. "I'm Vaughn Ironside. I run the livery and do some ranching outside town," he said, extending a hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. "Nayeli Duquesne. That's a pretty name," he said, tilting his head. "French father, trapper," she confirmed, surprised he'd recognized it. "He died when I was young." They began walking down the main street, drawing curious looks from the few people still conducting business as dusk settled. Nayeli could feel the weight of their stares, but Vaughn seemed unbothered, nodding to townspeople as they passed. "You're a long way from Crow territory," he commented. Nayeli's throat tightened. "I can't go back." He didn't press, just nodded as if her simple statement told him everything he needed to know. They reached the boarding house, a two-story white building with green trim and a small, neat garden out front. Before they reached the door, it swung open to reveal a plump, gray-haired woman with kind eyes. "Vaughn Ironside, are you bringing trouble to my doorstep this late?" the woman asked, though her tone was warm. "Mrs. Peterson, this here is Nayeli. She's looking for work and a place to stay." "Thought you might be able to help," Vaughn said, removing his hat. The older woman's eyes assessed Nayeli quickly, taking in her travel-worn appearance and obvious heritage. "Well, I do need help with the cleaning and cooking, especially with the cattle buyers coming through next month." She sighed. "But girl, you should know not everyone in Dillon will be welcoming. We've had incidents." "I understand," Nayeli said quietly. "I won't cause trouble." Mrs. Peterson's expression softened. "It's not you causing trouble I'm worried about, dear." She glanced at Vaughn, who was watching Nayeli with an intensity that surprised even himself. "Well, come on in then. We'll sort out the details inside." As Nayeli stepped toward the doorway, she turned back to Vaughn. "Thank you," she said simply. He nodded, replacing his hat. "I'll come by tomorrow to see how you're settling in." As he walked away into the gathering darkness, Nayeli felt a curious lightness in her chest, the first glimmer of hope she'd felt since she'd been forced to leave her tribe 3 weeks ago. Perhaps Dillon could be a new beginning, though she knew better than to expect acceptance. Inside, Mrs. Peterson showed her to a small but clean room at the back of the house. "It's not much," the older woman said, "but it's private and you'll have your own entrance." Nayeli set down her bundle. "It's more than I expected." Mrs. Peterson hesitated at the door. "Are you running from something, child, or someone?" Nayeli met the woman's gaze steadily. "Not in the way you think. My tribe cast me out for loving a white man." The words felt strange to say aloud, the shame and pain still fresh. "He's gone now, but I couldn't stay." The older woman nodded slowly. "Well, we all have our stories, don't we? Get some rest, we'll start early tomorrow." Left alone, Nayeli unpacked her few possessions: a dress, a knife her father had given her, a small pouch of dried herbs, and a tattered book of poetry the missionary school had given her years ago. She touched the pages gently, remembering how Thomas had read to her from it, his voice soft in the moonlight. Thomas Warren had been a government surveyor, educated and gentle, so different from the soldiers who had fought her people. He had respected her culture, learned words in her language, brought her gifts of paper and pencils so she could draw the plants she knew. And now he was dead, shot by a drunken soldier who'd taken offense at seeing a white man with an Indian woman. The soldier had been reprimanded but not punished further. And Nayeli had been cast out by her tribe's elders for bringing danger to them, for defying traditions, for loving outside the boundaries they had set. As she lay on the unfamiliar bed, Nayeli let the tears come. She cried for Thomas, for her lost family, for the uncertain future ahead. By morning she promised herself she would be strong again, but tonight she would allow herself to mourn. True to his word, Vaughn appeared at the boarding house the following morning as Nayeli was helping prepare breakfast. The kitchen was warm and fragrant with coffee and baking bread, and Mrs. Peterson was already showing her how things were done in her establishment. "Morning, ladies," Vaughn said, hat in hand at the back door. "Thought I'd check if you needed anything from town, Mrs. Peterson." The older woman smiled knowingly. "We're fine, Vaughn, though you're welcome to join us for breakfast since you're here." Nayeli kept her eyes on the bread she was slicing, aware of his presence in a way that made her uncomfortable. It was too soon after Thomas, too raw. "Actually," Vaughn said, clearing his throat, "I spoke with Doc Miller last night. He's interested in talking with Nayeli about her knowledge of herbs and such. Said he could use help with his patients, especially the ones who can't afford his regular medicines." Nayeli looked up, surprised. "He would trust an Indian woman to help." "Doc's different," Vaughn replied. "Lost his wife to childbed fever 5 years back. Says if he'd known the remedies the local Indians use, she might have lived. He's been trying to learn ever since." Mrs. Peterson nodded approvingly. "That's a good opportunity, Nayeli. You could work here mornings and for the doctor afternoons." "I thank you," Nayeli said, meeting Vaughn's eyes. "That's very kind," he shrugged. "Ain't kindness if it's mutually beneficial. Town needs a good healer as much as you need work." After breakfast, Vaughn walked Nayeli to the doctor's small office on the edge of town. As they passed the general store, a group of men lounging outside fell silent, watching them. "Well, well," one called out, his voice slurring despite the early hour. "Ironside's got himself an Indian girl, sharing with the rest of us, Vaughn." Nayeli stiffened but kept walking, her eyes fixed ahead. She'd heard worse. Vaughn stopped abruptly, turning to face the men. "You apologize to the lady, Harkins, or I'll make you regret that remark," the drunk sneered. "Lady, that's rich." What happened next was so quick Nayeli barely registered it. Vaughn crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides, grabbed Harkins by his shirt collar and slammed him against the store wall. "Apologize," Vaughn said quietly, his voice deadly calm. "Sorry," Harkins choked out, his face reddening. "Sorry, miss." Vaughn released him and returned to Nayeli's side without another word. They continued walking, the silence between them tense. "You shouldn't have done that," Nayeli said finally. "Now they'll target you too," Vaughn snorted. "Been targeted my whole life for one thing or another. Don't much care anymore." Nayeli studied him curiously. "Why are you helping me?" He walked a few more steps before answering. "My mother was half Cherokee. Wasn't enough to mark me as different to look at, but enough that my pa's folks never accepted her. Watched her take that kind of talk her whole life." He met her gaze. "Nobody deserves that." The revelation shifted something in Nayeli's perception of him. Not fully white, but enough to pass living between worlds in his own way. Dr. Miller turned out to be a gentle, scholarly man in his 50s with spectacles and a thoughtful manner. He listened with genuine interest as Nayeli described the medicinal plants she knew, taking notes and asking questions about preparation methods. "This is exactly what I've been trying to learn," he said excitedly. The soldiers at Fort Ellis get government medicine, but the townspeople and ranchers often can't afford it if we can supplement with effective natural remedies. He trailed off, already making plans. Could you start tomorrow? I can pay 50 cents a day. It was less than a white assistant would make, but more than Nayeli had hoped for. Yes, thank you. As they left the doctor's office, Vaughn seemed pleased. Told you he'd be interested. Thank you, Nayeli said again, meaning it, for everything. Don't thank me yet, Vaughn replied. Dillon's not an easy place for someone like you, but if you're half as strong as I think you are, you'll manage. Over the next few weeks, Nayeli established a routine. Mornings at the boarding house, helping with breakfast and cleaning rooms. Afternoons with Dr. Miller, preparing remedies, and sometimes assisting with patients who were willing to be treated by an Indian woman. To her surprise, many were especially women with female complaints they found embarrassing to discuss with a male doctor. Vaughn became a regular presence in her life, stopping by the boarding house or the doctor's office, offering to walk her between jobs, bringing her plants he found on his property that he thought might be useful. At first, Nayeli maintained her distance, wary of forming attachments that might lead to more pain. But gradually, she found herself looking forward to his visits. One evening in late July, as summer heat baked the town, Vaughn invited her to see his ranch outside town. Just a small place, he said modestly, but I've got a garden started and some plants I can't identify. Thought you might know them. Mrs. Peterson, who had become something of a protective figure to Nayeli, raised her eyebrows at the invitation but didn't object. Be back before dark, was all she said. The ranch was indeed small by Montana standards, 40 acres with a modest cabin, a corral with several horses, and a few head of cattle grazing on the hillside. But to Nayeli, it was beautiful. The land stretched toward distant mountains, wild and open in a way that reminded her of home without the painful associations. It's lovely, she said honestly as Vaughn showed her around. He looked pleased. Been working it 5 years now, still not much to show, but it's mine. The garden was a surprise neat rows of vegetables alongside herbs and flowers. Didn't take you for a gardener, Nayeli commented. Vaughn shrugged, looking almost embarrassed. My mother taught me, said a man who can't grow his own food isn't much of a man at all. He gestured to some plants at the edge. These are the ones I was wondering about. Nayeli knelt to examine them. This is yarrow, good for stopping bleeding, and this one's echinacea helps fight fever. As she identified each plant, Vaughn watched her with an intensity that had nothing to do with the herbs. The late afternoon sun caught in her dark hair, bringing out copper highlights, and her movements were graceful as she touched each plant with knowing fingers. You're staring, she said without looking up. Can't help it, he replied honestly. Nayeli stood, suddenly self-conscious. We should head back. Mrs. Peterson will worry. Vaughn nodded but made no move to leave. Instead, he asked the question that had been on his mind for weeks. The white man your tribe cast you out for loving, who was he? Nayeli went still. His name was Thomas Warren, a surveyor for the government. What happened to him? She looked away toward the mountains. He was killed. A soldier who didn't like seeing us together shot him. Said it was an accident during a hunting trip. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Thomas died in my arms. When I returned to my village covered in his blood, the elders said I had brought bad spirits and danger to our people, that loving a white man had cursed me. Vaughn stepped closer. I'm sorry. I don't want your pity, Nayeli said sharply. Good, because I'm not offering it, he replied, his voice equally firm. I'm offering understanding. Loss is loss, Nayeli, no matter who you are or where you come from. She looked at him then, really looked, and saw the sincerity in his eyes. We should go back, she said again, but her voice was softer. On the ride back to town, they were quiet, but it was a comfortable silence. As they approached the boarding house, Vaughn suddenly said, There's a social at the church next Saturday, dancing and such. Would you consider going with me? Nayeli turned to him in surprise. A social with you? Vaughn, the townspeople barely tolerate me as it is, so I don't much care what they think. You should, she said seriously. This is your home. These people are your neighbors and customers if you're seen. Courting an Indian woman, it will affect you. Vaughn reined his horse to a stop. First, I didn't say anything about courting. I asked you to a dance. Second, anyone who'd hold it against me for spending time with a woman I respect isn't worth my concern anyway. Nayeli stared at him, torn between admiration for his principles and fear of the consequences. "I can't dance," she finally said. Vaughn grinned, recognizing the statement as acceptance. "I'm not much good at it either. We'll look foolish together." The night of the social arrived clear and warm. Nayeli wore her best dress, a dark blue cotton that Mrs. Peterson had helped her alter to fit better, and arranged her hair in a simple style that mimicked the other women in town rather than traditional crow braids. She knew she wouldn't pass for white, but she hoped to attract less attention. Vaughn arrived at the boarding house looking transformed. His usual work clothes had been replaced by a clean white shirt, black vest, and pressed trousers. He'd trimmed his beard and slicked back his dark hair. When Nayeli opened the door, he momentarily lost his usual easy confidence. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "You clean up well yourself," she replied, trying to hide how his compliment affected her. Mrs. Peterson appeared behind Nayeli. "You two have a nice time. And Vaughn," she added, her expression stern, "you make sure she's treated properly." "Yes, madam," he agreed solemnly. The church was lit with lanterns, the pews pushed to the sides to create a dance floor. A small band played lively tunes, and tables laden with food and drink lined one wall. As they entered, conversation dimmed noticeably, heads turning to stare at the unusual couple. Nayeli felt her resolve falter. This was a mistake. Vaughn placed a hand gently at the small of her back. "No, it wasn't. Hold your head high, Nayeli. You have every right to be here, doctor." Miller broke the tension by approaching them immediately. "Nayeli, Vaughn, good to see you both." He turned to introduce his sister, who had recently arrived from St. Louis, and within moments they were engaged in conversation about the differences between city and frontier life. Gradually, the initial discomfort faded. Not everyone was welcoming. Several women pointedly avoided them, and a group of men by the punch bowl cast hostile glances their way, but others followed the doctor's lead, greeting them politely if not warmly. When the band started a simple waltz, Vaughn offered his hand. "Shall we?" Nayeli hesitated. "I wasn't joking about not knowing how to dance. Just follow my lead," he said. "It's not so different from the rhythm of riding." He was right once she stopped worrying about the steps and simply followed his movements. Nayeli found herself enjoying the dance. Vaughn was surprisingly graceful for such a tall man, guiding her confidently around the floor. For a few minutes, she forgot about the stares and whispers, lost in the music and the warm security of his arms. The moment was shattered when someone bumped hard into Vaughn, nearly knocking them both over. Harkins, the man from outside the general store, leered at them. "Sorry," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "Didn't see you there with your squaw." Vaughn's hand tightened on Nayeli's waist. "Walk away, Harkins, now." But Harkins, emboldened by alcohol and the presence of his friends, wasn't finished. "You know what they say about men who take up with Indian women, don't you? That they couldn't get a proper this time." Vaughn's punch caught him squarely in the jaw, sending him sprawling. The music screeched to a halt as women gasped, and men moved to either restrain Vaughn or help Harkins. "That's enough," the Reverend's voice cut through the commotion. "This is a house of God, gentlemen." Nayeli had already stepped back, her face burning with humiliation. Without a word, she turned and fled the church, ignoring Vaughn's call to wait. She ran blindly into the summer night, her vision blurred with tears of anger and shame. She'd been a fool to think she could ever fit into this world, that she could ever be seen as anything but an outsider, a curiosity at best and a target at worst. Vaughn caught up to her at the edge of town. "Nayeli, stop, please," she whirled to face him. "Why? So I can cause more trouble for you, so more of your neighbors can look at you like you've lost your mind." "I don't give a damn what they think," he said fiercely. "Well, you should," she shot back. "This is your home, Vaughn. These people can make your life impossible if they choose to. And for what? For a woman you barely know who doesn't belong here." His expression softened. "But I want to know you, and you belong wherever you choose to belong." The simple declaration took the wind out of her anger. "It's not that simple." "It can be," he insisted, stepping closer. "Nayeli, I know it's too soon after Thomas, I know you're still healing, but I feel something for you I've never felt for anyone, and I hope you might feel something too." Nayeli closed her eyes, overwhelmed. Of course she felt something. Vaughn's kindness, his strength, his acceptance of her as she was, all of it had gradually broken through her defenses. But the fear was still there, the memory of loss still fresh. "I can't," she whispered. "Not again, not yet." Vaughn nodded, the disappointment in his eyes tempered with understanding. "I'll wait," he said simply, "for as long as it takes." He walked her back to the boarding house in silence, leaving her at the door with a gentle squeeze of her hand but no further words. Nayeli watched him go, her heart torn between the safety of isolation and the risk of opening herself to love again. The incident at the church social had repercussions. Some patients at the doctor's office now refused to be treated if Nayeli was present. Mrs. Peterson reported losing 2 regular boarders who objected to having an Indian woman working there. And Vaughn found several of his horses let loose one night, a crude warning painted on his stable door. Yet for every act of hostility, there were small kindnesses: the storekeeper who slipped extra sugar into Nayeli's package without charging for it, the rancher's wife who specifically requested Nayeli's herbal remedy for her arthritis, the children who brought her wildflowers after she had treated a little boy's broken arm. Vaughn was true to his word. He remained a steady presence in her life but didn't pressure her for more than friendship. He continued to visit, to escort her when needed, to bring interesting plants or books he thought she might enjoy. His patience and constancy gradually wore down her resistance. August brought scorching heat and drought to the region. The creeks ran low, pastures turned brown, and tempers frayed in the relentless sun. When word came that a brush fire had started in the hills north of town, the entire community mobilized to fight it. Nayeli worked alongside Dr. Miller, treating burns and smoke inhalation as men returned from the fire lines. The flames were visible from town by nightfall, an ominous orange glow against the darkening sky. When Vaughn hadn't returned by midnight, Nayeli felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. "He's probably still out there fighting," Mrs. Peterson reassured her. "Vaughn knows those hills better than most." But as dawn approached with no sign of him, Nayeli could wait no longer. Against Mrs. Peterson's objections, she took a horse from the livery and rode toward the fire line, a bag of burn remedies and bandages tied to her saddle. The scene that greeted her was chaotic, exhausted men battling a wall of flame that seemed to have a mind of its own, jumping fire breaks and sending burning debris through the air to start new blazes. Smoke hung heavy, making it difficult to breathe or see clearly. Nayeli spotted the sheriff directing efforts near a creek bed. "Where's Vaughn Ironside?" she called over the roar of the fire. The sheriff looked at her in confusion, then recognition dawned. "The Indian woman from town, what in God's name are you doing here?" "Looking for Vaughn," she repeated more urgently. "Have you seen him?" The sheriff shook his head. "Not for a couple hours. He and some others went to check if the fire jumped the North Ridge." Nayeli didn't hesitate. She urged her horse up the trail toward the ridge, ignoring the sheriff's shout to come back. The smoke grew thicker as she climbed, forcing her to tie a damp cloth over her nose and mouth. The horse grew increasingly nervous, but Nayeli kept her steady with firm hands and soothing words in her native tongue. At the top of the ridge, she could see that the fire had indeed crossed over, creating a new front that threatened to circle back toward town. There was no sign of Vaughn or the other men. Nayeli pressed on, following the edge of the burned area, calling Vaughn's name whenever the wind shifted enough to clear the smoke momentarily. Finally, in a small clearing protected by rocky outcrops, she found them 3 men, including Vaughn, trapped by a fallen burning tree that blocked their path back to safety. One man was unconscious, another clutching what appeared to be a broken arm. Vaughn was trying to drag the unconscious man away from encroaching flames while the injured man stumbled alongside. "Vaughn," Nayeli called, dismounting quickly and tying her horse to a rock far from the flames. He looked up, disbelief crossing his soot-streaked face. "Nayeli." "What are you doing here?" "Looking for you," she said, rushing to help. "The fire's circling back toward town. We need to get out of here." Together, they managed to get the unconscious man onto her horse. The man with the broken arm could still walk, though he was weak from pain and smoke inhalation. Vaughn found a path around the burning tree, and they began the difficult journey back toward town, Nayeli leading the horse while Vaughn supported the injured man. The wind shifted suddenly, driving smoke and heat directly at them. The horse reared in panic, nearly throwing off its unconscious rider. As Nayeli struggled to control the animal, a burning branch fell, striking her shoulder. She cried out, falling to her knees as pain seared through her. Vaughn was at her side instantly. "Nayeli, how bad?" She gritted her teeth against the pain. "I can still walk, we have to keep moving." The next hour was a blur of smoke, heat, and determination as they fought their way back toward the fire line. Just when Nayeli thought they couldn't go any further, they heard voices calling a search party had been sent to find them back in town. Dr. Miller treated Nayeli's burn while Vaughn hovered anxiously nearby, refusing treatment for his own injuries until he was certain she would be all right. "It's not deep," the doctor assured them both. "It will heal without much scarring if you keep it clean and use the salve." When they were finally alone, Vaughn took Nayeli's uninjured hand in his. "You could have been killed coming after me," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Why would you take such a risk?" Nayeli met his gaze steadily. "Because I couldn't bear the thought of losing you too." The simple admission seemed to shift something between them. Vaughn raised her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her fingers. "You won't lose me, Nayeli. Not if I have any say in the matter." As summer faded into autumn, Nayeli's relationship with Vaughn deepened. They spent every free moment together, riding on his land, working in his garden, sitting on Mrs. Peterson's porch talking for hours. Vaughn taught Nayeli to fish in the creek that ran through his property. She showed him how to identify medicinal plants and prepare remedies for common ailments. Some of the townspeople began to accept their relationship, especially after the fire when stories of Nayeli's bravery spread. Others remained hostile, but seemed to realize that their disapproval wasn't going to separate the couple. One crisp October evening, as they sat by the fire in Vaughn's cabin after a day of harvesting the last of his garden, he finally asked the question she had been both expecting and dreading. "Nayeli," he began, taking her hands in his, "I know it hasn't been that long, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. Will you marry me?" Nayeli felt tears spring to her eyes. "Vaughn, I love you too, but marriage." "The law in Montana doesn't prohibit it," he finished for her. "I checked, it's legal here, though not everyone approves." "That's putting it mildly," she said with a wry smile. "Your business could suffer, people might let them," Vaughn said firmly. "Nayeli, when I was trapped by that fire, thinking I might not make it out, all I could think about was you. Not my ranch, not my horses, not what anyone in town thought of me, just you and all the time I might not get to spend with you." He squeezed her hands. "I don't want to waste another day worrying about what others think." Nayeli searched his face, finding nothing but sincerity and love. "Yes," she said finally. "Yes, I'll marry you." The wedding was small and simple, held in Vaughn's cabin with only Dr. Miller, his sister Mrs. Peterson, and the more open-minded reverend from a neighboring town in attendance. Nayeli wore a dress of soft buckskin that she had made herself, incorporating both Crow traditions and Western styling. Vaughn couldn't take his eyes off her as they spoke their vows. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the reverend declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." As Vaughn kissed her, Nayeli felt a sense of homecoming she had thought lost forever. She had found her place not in her tribe, not in white society, but in the love of a man who saw her for who she truly was. The first year of their marriage brought both joy and challenges. They lived on Vaughn's ranch, gradually expanding the house and garden. Nayeli continued to work with Dr. Miller, whose practice was now thriving thanks in part to her knowledge of natural remedies. Vaughn's livery business remained steady, though some customers took their business elsewhere after his marriage became known. In late summer, as they celebrated their first anniversary, Nayeli shared news that brought tears to Vaughn's eyes. She was expecting their child. "A baby," he whispered, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. Our baby, she echoed, covering his hand with hers. A child of two worlds." The pregnancy progressed well through the fall, but as winter set in, Nayeli began experiencing troubling symptoms: dizziness, unusual swelling, headaches. Dr. Miller monitored her closely, concern growing in his eyes with each visit. "The baby is healthy," he assured them, "but I'm worried about you, Nayeli. These symptoms suggest a condition we call eclampsia. It can be dangerous for the mother." Vaughn tightened his grip on Nayeli's hand. "What can we do?" "Rest, mainly. Stay off your feet as much as possible. And we'll need to watch for signs that it's worsening." Nayeli nodded, outwardly calm, but Vaughn knew she was frightened. That night, as they lay in bed, she confessed her fears. "My mother died giving birth to my younger brother," she whispered. "It happens often in my tribe." Vaughn pulled her close. "You're not going to die, Nayeli. Dr. Miller knows what to watch for, and you know remedies your mother's midwife probably didn't have." She nodded against his chest. "I know, but if something happens to me, nothing will happen," he interrupted fiercely. "But if it does," she persisted, "promise me you'll tell our child about both sides of their heritage, about the Crow people and our ways, about my father and mother. Promise me they'll know where they come from." Vaughn kissed her forehead, his throat tight with emotion. "I promise. But you'll be here to tell them yourself." As the winter deepened, Nayeli's condition worsened despite their best efforts. By January, she was confined to bed, her normally vibrant face pale and drawn, her hands and feet swollen painfully. One bitter cold night, as a blizzard howled outside their cabin, Nayeli went into labor 2 months before the baby was due. Vaughn rode through the storm to fetch Dr. Miller, nearly freezing in the process. By the time they returned, Nayeli was delirious with fever, the contractions coming fast and hard. "We need to deliver the baby now," Dr. Miller said grimly, rolling up his sleeves. "Vaughn, I'll need hot water, all the clean linens you have, and that willow bark tea Nayeli prepared last week." The next hours were the longest of Vaughn's life. He held Nayeli's hand, wiped her brow, whispered encouragement as she fought to bring their child into the world. When her strength seemed to flag, he reminded her of all they had to live for, of the future they had planned together. Just before dawn, as the storm began to ease, their son was born tiny but alive, with a lusty cry that belied his early arrival. "Nicholas," Nayeli whispered as the baby was placed in her arms, "after my father." "Nicholas Vaughn Ironside," Vaughn agreed, his heart so full he thought it might burst, but their joy was tempered by Nayeli's continuing weakness. The bleeding wouldn't stop, and Dr. Miller's face grew increasingly grave as he worked to save her. "Vaughn," Nayeli said softly, her voice barely audible. "If I don't you dare," Vaughn interrupted, tears streaming down his face. "Don't you dare leave us, Nayeli Ironside. Fight, damn it. Fight for me, for Nicholas, for our future." She reached up a trembling hand to touch his face. "I am fighting, but I need something in my medicine pouch, the dark root." Vaughn grabbed her pouch from the bedside table, fumbling through it until he found a small piece of gnarled root. "This," she nodded weakly, "chew it, then put the paste on the bleeding." "Doctor." Miller looked skeptical but desperate enough to try anything. "Do as she says, Vaughn." The bitter root made him gag, but Vaughn chewed it thoroughly before giving the resulting paste to the doctor. After applying it, Dr. Miller continued his other efforts to stop the bleeding. Whether it was the root, the doctor's skill, or Nayeli's sheer determination to live, the bleeding finally slowed. By mid-morning, Dr. Miller declared her out of immediate danger, though still very weak. "She'll need weeks of rest and good nutrition to recover fully," he told Vaughn. "And the baby will need special care too, but I believe they'll both make it now." Vaughn sat beside the bed, holding his sleeping son in one arm while his other hand clasped Nayeli's. "Thank you," he whispered to whatever powers might be listening. "Thank you for not taking them from me." Recovery was slow. Winter still gripped the land, making it difficult for visitors to reach the isolated ranch. Vaughn did everything, caring for Nayeli and the baby, tending the livestock, keeping the fire burning, preparing meals from their stored provisions. He worked himself to exhaustion each day, sleeping only in short bursts when both wife and son were peaceful. Little Nicholas thrived despite his early arrival, growing stronger each day. Nayeli regained her strength more gradually, frustrated by her weakness, but determined to recover fully for her family's sake. On a clear February day, as sunlight sparkled on the snow outside their window, Nayeli sat up in bed holding Nicholas while Vaughn brought her tea. "I had a dream last night," she said, looking down at their son's dark hair and delicate features, a perfect blend of both parents. "I saw my tribe's camp and my father was there. He was holding Nicholas, showing him to everyone, so proud." Tears filled her eyes. "In the dream, they accepted us." Vaughn sat beside her, putting an arm around her shoulders. "Maybe someday they will. People can change, Nayeli." She leaned against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. My tribe cast me out for loving a white man, she said softly, echoing the words she had spoken to Mrs. Peterson that first night in Dillon. But look what that love has given me. Vaughn kissed her temple gently. Their loss, my blessing, he murmured. You and Nicholas are the greatest gifts I could ever receive. By spring, Nayeli had regained her health, and the small family settled into a rhythm of life on the ranch. Nicholas grew rapidly, a happy, curious baby who delighted in the world around him. Vaughn expanded their house, adding a larger kitchen where Nayeli could prepare the remedies that were increasingly in demand from townspeople who had overcome their prejudice in favor of effective medicine. Word of Nayeli's healing skills spread beyond Dillon, bringing people from neighboring settlements seeking help for ailments that conventional doctors couldn't cure. She never turned anyone away, regardless of race or ability to pay. Sometimes payment came in the form of food, livestock, or labor around the ranch, all welcome as their family enterprise grew. One summer day, as Nayeli worked in her herb garden with Nicholas playing nearby, a group of riders appeared on the horizon. As they drew closer, she recognized the clothing and appearance of Crow warriors. Her heart raced as she scooped up her son and hurried to the house. Vaughn, she called urgently. Crow riders coming, Vaughn emerged from the barn, rifle in hand though not raised. He moved to stand beside Nayeli as the riders approached, his posture protective but not hostile. The lead rider, an older man with gray streaked hair and traditional face paint, raised his hand in a gesture of peace. We come to talk, not fight, he said in the Crow language. Nayeli responded in kind, though she stayed close to Vaughn. Why have you come? I am Two Bears, elder of the northern band, the man replied. We have heard of a Crow woman who heals both Indians and whites near here, a woman cast out who now builds bridges between peoples. He studied her face. You are Joseph Duquesne's daughter, Nayeli nodded, surprised to hear her father's name. I am. Two Bears dismounted slowly, approaching on foot as a show of respect. The other warriors remained on their horses, watchful but non-threatening. Your father was respected among our people, Two Bears said, a good man who honored our ways despite his white blood. He glanced at the child in her arms. Your son has the look of both worlds as you do. His name is Nicholas, Nayeli said, adjusting the baby so Two Bears could see his face better. After my father. The elder nodded approvingly. The winter was hard on our people. Many are sick with the white man's diseases, coughing, sickness, fever. Our healers have tried traditional remedies, but too many die, especially the children. He met her gaze directly. We ask if you would come to our camp. Bring your medicines, help our people. Vaughn tensed beside her. The same people who cast her out, who called her cursed. Nayeli placed a hand on his arm to calm him, then addressed Two Bears. The elders said I could never return. The elders who banished you are gone, Two Bears replied. Some died in the fighting last year, others lost influence when their harsh ways brought suffering instead of safety. He gestured to the ranch, the garden, the evidence of their successful life. You have found a new path that honors both heritages. Our people could learn from this. Nayeli looked at Vaughn, uncertain. This was more than a request for medical help. It was an opportunity for reconciliation, for healing wounds deeper than any physical ailment. We will need time to prepare, Vaughn said, making the decision for them both. And we come together, my wife, my son, and myself, as a family. Two Bears studied Vaughn with new respect. 3 days, we are camped at Elk Creek Valley, a half-day's ride north. He turned back to Nayeli. Bring what medicines you can carry, the need is great. After the warriors departed, Vaughn and Nayeli sat on their porch discussing the unexpected development. Nicholas played at their feet, oblivious to the significance of what had just occurred. Are you sure about this? Nayeli asked. It could be dangerous. Vaughn shook his head. If they meant us harm, they wouldn't have come openly to our door asking for help. But more importantly, he took her hand. I know what this means to you. The chance to reconnect with your people, to share your knowledge, to show them that your path wasn't a mistake. Tears filled Nayeli's eyes. When they cast me out, I thought I'd lost my identity, my heritage, everything that made me who I am. But you helped me see that I could build something new without losing myself. 3 days later, they set out for the Crow camp. Vaughn, Nayeli, and Nicholas, along with 2 pack horses laden with medical supplies. Dr. Miller had contributed medicines from his own stock, and Mrs. Peterson had sent food for the journey, both of them concerned but supportive of the mission. The Crow camp was larger than Nayeli had expected, nearly 100 lodges arranged in the traditional circle. As they approached, children spotted them and ran ahead to announce their arrival. Women emerged from lodges, some looking curious, others wary. Warriors stood guard, expressions neutral as they assessed the newcomers. 2 bears met them at the edge of camp. "You have come, good." He led them to a large lodge at the center of the circle. "This will be yours while you are here. The sick ones are in lodges marked with red cloth." Inside, the lodge was clean and comfortable, with buffalo robes for bedding and a fire pit in the center. "We will let you settle in," 2 bears said. "Then I will bring the other healers to meet with you." When he had gone, Vaughn turned to Nayeli. "Are you all right?" She nodded, emotions too complex for words as she looked around the traditional dwelling, so familiar yet now strange after her time away. "It feels like another lifetime," she said finally, "but also like yesterday." They spent 2 weeks in the Crow camp. The first days were consumed with treating the sick, mostly children and elders suffering from tuberculosis and influenza, diseases against which traditional remedies had limited effect. Nayeli worked alongside the tribe's healers, teaching them to use the medicines she had brought while learning from their knowledge as well. To her surprise, many remembered her from before, not as the cursed woman who had defied tradition, but as Joseph Duquesne's daughter, the girl who had always had a gift for healing. Several older women who had been friends of her mother sought her out, eager to meet her son and share stories of Nayeli's childhood. Vaughn found his own place in the camp. Initially viewed with suspicion as a white man, his willingness to help with any task and his obvious devotion to Nayeli and Nicholas gradually won respect. The warriors were particularly impressed by his horsemanship and hunting skills, inviting him to join them on a successful buffalo hunt that provided meat for the entire camp. Most meaningful to Nayeli was the night of the storytelling. 2 bears invited them to the council fire where the tribe's history and legends were shared. When the formal stories were finished, he stood and addressed the gathering. "Many winters ago, a French trapper came to our people. He did not try to change our ways or take our land. He learned our language, respected our customs, married one of our women according to our traditions. From this union came a daughter, Nayeli, who carried the wisdom of both worlds." He gestured for Nayeli to stand. "When this daughter grew to womanhood, she loved a white man who was not like the soldiers who had fought us. For this, she was cast out, told she had betrayed her people." Murmurs ran through the crowd, some of agreement, others of discomfort, but the spirits had a different plan. "They led her to another good man," he nodded to Vaughn, "and together they have built a life that honors both heritages. Now she returns to us, not seeking revenge for past wrongs, but bringing healing and hope." 2 bears took something from a pouch at his waist, a necklace of bear claws and blue beads that Nayeli recognized with a shock. It had been her mother's, a symbol of her status as the wife of a respected man. "This belongs to you now," 2 bears said, placing it around her neck. "Wear it as a sign that you are of our people, even as you walk in the white man's world. Your son," he touched Nicholas's dark hair gently, "will always have a place here should he wish to know the ways of his ancestors." Tears flowed freely down Nayeli's face as she accepted the honor. Vaughn stood beside her, one hand supportively at her back, his own eyes suspiciously bright. When they returned to their ranch a few days later, something had shifted. A bridge had been built, not just between Nayeli and her tribe, but between 2 worlds that had too often seen each other only as enemies. Twice more that year, they visited the Crow camp, bringing supplies and medicine, staying for a few days each time to strengthen the new bonds. Word of their efforts spread. By the following spring, Vaughn and Nayeli found themselves hosting an unprecedented gathering. Crow elders and Dillon townspeople meeting on neutral ground to discuss trade possibilities and ways to avoid the conflicts that had marked previous interactions. Dr. Miller was there, as was the reverend from the neighboring town who had married them. Mrs. Peterson brought her famous apple pies. 2 bears and several other respected Crow leaders brought gifts of expertly tanned hides and beadwork. As Nayeli watched the cautious but genuine interactions, her son on her hip babbling happily in a mix of English and Crow words. She felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond personal happiness. They were building something important here, a future where their son might not have to choose between his heritages, but could embrace both with pride. "Penny for your thoughts," Vaughn said quietly, coming to stand beside her. Nayeli smiled up at him. "I was thinking about the day I arrived in Dillon, how lost I felt, how certain I was that I would never belong anywhere again." She looked around at the gathering White and Crow, talking, eating, some even laughing together. "I could never have imagined this." Vaughn slipped an arm around her waist. "You made it happen, Nayeli. Your courage, your refusal to give up either part of who you are." He kissed her temple gently. "I knew from that first day that you were someone special. We made it happen," she corrected him, "together." That night, after their guests had departed and Nicholas was asleep, Nayeli sat on their porch watching the stars emerge in the vast Montana sky. Vaughn joined her, bringing a blanket to wrap around them against the spring chill. "I have something to tell you," she said, nestling against his side. "What's that?" he asked, his arm tightening around her. Nayeli took his free hand and placed it on her stomach. "Nicholas is going to be a big brother." Vaughn's face transformed with joy. "Really? Are you sure?" She nodded, laughing at his excitement. "Dr. Miller confirmed it yesterday. He says everything looks good, no signs of the problems I had before." Vaughn pulled her into a gentle but fervent kiss. When they finally separated, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you, Nayeli Ironside. Every day with you is a gift I never thought I'd have." "And I love you," she replied softly. "My tribe cast me out for loving a white man," she added, echoing the words that had defined her life for so long. "But I found a new home, a new family, a new purpose, something stronger than what I lost." Vaughn smiled, repeating his own words from long ago. "Their loss, my blessing." As they sat together under the star-filled sky, planning for their growing family and the work still ahead of them, Nayeli knew with bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, not fully of the white world, not fully of the Crow world, but in the precious space between where love bridged all differences. In the years that followed, their family and their legacy grew. Their daughter, Sarah, joined them the following winter, a healthy birth with none of the complications of Nicholas's arrival. 2 more children followed William 3 years later, and finally, little Emma, born as Nayeli approached her 40th year, a surprise and delight to their growing family. The ranch prospered, expanding as Vaughn acquired adjacent land. Nayeli's reputation as a healer continued to spread, eventually leading to her writing a book on medicinal plants that combined Crow wisdom with scientific knowledge, published back east to unexpected acclaim. Nicholas grew into a thoughtful young man who inherited his father's skill with horses and his mother's gift for bringing people together. As an adult, he would become an important voice for cooperation between settlers and native peoples throughout Montana territory. Each summer, they hosted gatherings that grew larger every year, Crow families camping on their land, townspeople bringing food and music, children of both cultures playing together while adults built business relationships and friendships that would have seemed impossible a generation earlier. It wasn't always easy. There were setbacks, conflicts, moments when old prejudices flared. But the foundation they had built was strong enough to weather the storms, and the example they set inspired others to look beyond differences to the common humanity beneath. On their 30th wedding anniversary, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and friends from both worlds, Vaughn and Nayeli renewed the vows they had made in that small cabin so many years before. Her hair now streaked with silver, his face weathered by decades of Montana sun, they stood hand in hand before their community. "My tribe cast me out for loving a white man," Nayeli said, her voice strong and clear despite her years. "But love proved stronger than rejection. Love built bridges where there were walls. Love created this family, this community, this life that has been more beautiful than I ever dared to dream." Vaughn, his eyes still bright with the same devotion that had sustained them through hardship and joy alike, squeezed her hands gently. "Their loss was indeed my blessing, the greatest blessing of my life. And I thank God every day that you had the courage to start again, to trust again, to love again." As the sun set over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in the same red-gold hues of that long-ago evening when Nayeli first arrived in Dillon. She looked around at the life they had built together and knew that some journeys, no matter how painful their beginning, led exactly where they were always meant to go.